Well, I have a problem, and that happens often during the writing process for me. I ended the beginning of my story the way I wanted, with a twist, a kind of a surprise. It would be, if this was at the end of a chapter, it would be known as a cliffhanger, and I write a lot of cliffhangers. McGee and Nipper, in the beginning, are running from agents, and at the end of that, she is captured by her father's agents. So the surprise, the twist, the new direction the story going is that it's her father who has captured her through his agents and not some of the other royal corporations. Okay, that's great. So now she has been captured, and I have left Nipper alone to solve the problem. What am I going to do about that? That means I have to write the rest of the story, at least until I reach the end, where I can do another switch purely from a dog's point of view. I hadn't really expected to write most of a story completely from the dog's point of view, and that creates a problem. So I'm going to have to figure out some sort of fix for that. As often happens, I've written myself into a corner. Previously, I was able to rely on McGee being in the story, and McGee could be talking to herself, and McGee could be talking to Nipper, and I could present ideas that help explain the story better. But Nipper doesn't understand science, and Nipper doesn't always understand all of human behavior or all of the language. So at this point, I have a much different story than I originally had kind of thought about doing. But the benefit of doing that is now I'm going to have to write something that's going to be, I feel, much more interesting, much more unique. And this is what I love about writing myself into a corner, is I have to come up with solutions that aren't just typical solutions. It makes me really stand out in my stories, because I have to work for that solution of how now to fix and get past the problem I've created. And when I do, I generally come up with a much better way than if I just kind of knew ahead of time what I was going to do. Because then I tend to fall into the very expected course of action. And when I write myself in a corner, I have to come up with something really great, because, I'm stymied. So we're going to be doing that in this episode. I mean, I wanted a story from a dog's point of view, and now I really have one. We have officially arrived at the middle of the story, and this is where, in my mind, all the good stuff happened. I'm going to use an analogy I've heard before, that a writer's job is to put their hero in a tree and throw rocks at them. And what that really means is that we want to cause problems for a hero. We want to make it difficult for that hero to achieve the goal they want. And in this case, Nipper is wanting to be reunited with McGee, and both of them get safely away from all agents involved. They don't want to be involved with any of the royal corporations. And so now it is difficult. Now McGee is unconscious and been taken away, and Nipper's going to have to do that all on her own. All right, for your story, the first thing you're going to want to do is ask what obstacles you can throw in the way of your hero to make this more difficult, this to give a greater challenge to the story goal. These can range from things that are merely nuisance all the way up to an insurmountable challenge. The point of obstacles is to make the protagonist take extra steps to achieve their goal. Each new obstacle increases the tension of the story as the readers wonder how the protagonist is going to overcome the challenge. In some cases, the readers might wonder if the hero can do it. Second, ask yourself, what events can happen that will make the situation worse? This is super common in storylines that involve money sharks. The protagonist raises the money to pay back the debt and is informed that it isn't enough. A ridiculous amount of late fees has been applied to the loan, and the whole amount, the loan plus the late fees, are all due by the next day, or the gangster's going to break the hero's legs. Third, what actions by other characters in the story are making the goal harder to achieve? This doesn't have to be as direct as the bad events examples I gave above. This can be a matter of people acting without hate or malice, but the end result is not good for the hero. For example, in order to impress his girlfriend, a high school student might decide to buy concert tickets to her favorite band. However, the band is super popular and all the tickets have been purchased. Or maybe all the reasonably priced tickets have been bought, leaving the hero scrambling to find a way to raise enough money to buy the premium tickets that are still left. The final conflict that I'm going to discuss in this video is personal limitations. This could be physical limitations like a disease or a handicap. It can be social limitations like religious values or family rules. It can be economic limitations like the one I described above. The hero just doesn't have much money or a car or nice clothes. It could even be an arbitrary limitation like the protagonist having made a bet with his friends, and the rules of the bet prevent certain actions from being taken by the hero that could normally allow him or her to achieve the goal more easily. One last thing I want to mention is internal conflict. All of the items I mentioned about conflict applies to this as well, because conflict is conflict. I don't want to get into too many details on the topic in this video, but if you could add conflict that works on an emotional level, you'll have added a much greater depth to the story, which makes the reader more sympathetic for the hero. For this story that I'm writing, I will develop the internal conflict as I write, making use of the opportunities that present themselves as Nipper tries to save Magin. However, it isn't a bad idea to think about which internal conflicts you want to use ahead of time. For Nipper, that would probably be her reaction to being separated from Magin. I'm thinking that makes Nipper stressed and more likely to make mistakes, and that's good enough for me for now. In stories, I tend to like to work from what I call the rule of three, which means I try to use three of something as I write. In this case, it's going to be three conflicts or conflict elements, the things that are going to make it difficult for Nipper to find and rescue her human. The first is that Nipper has to follow Magin without being seen by any of the agents. There is a group of agents with several of them specifically keeping an eye out for trouble. Nipper will have to make careful use of her advanced sense of smell, her ability to open portals, and her natural dog instincts in order to track Magin. The second is that Nipper will need to find a way to sneak on board the spaceship where Magin is taken. Obviously, she can open a portal, but Nipper has never seen the inside of the ship. That limits her ability. Nipper will have to think that one through before she discovers a solution. Then the third obstacle is for Nipper to wake Magin so the two of them can escape. I'm going to do that with the old-fashioned way. Nipper is just going to lick Magin's face until she revives. Now, did I forget to mention that Magin isn't dead? As part of the middle, I will reveal that Nipper can tell Magin is still alive. I might even work in another obstacle of Nipper working to move in close enough to Magin and the agents to get a good whiff of her human, which will reveal that she has been drugged and not injured. All of that action and conflict brings me to the end of Act 2. As Nipper and Magin plan their escape, Draven shows up. Magin warns Draven not to hurt the dog. Hopefully my readers will be surprised when Draven laughs. Of course he won't hurt the dog. His assignment was to capture Nipper and return her to Magin's father. Dun dun dun! Magin was just the bait to lure the dog to where it could be more easily captured. In the next video, I'll be providing an ending for my story, which is a challenging feat for even experienced writers. I can't tell you how many writers that have written plenty of stories struggle to get that final part of the story done and entertaining. There's an adage in the writing community that you can write a great story and people will enjoy it. But if your ending, the end of your story is not great, they're not going to read another one. As always, I encourage you to share your thoughts or ask questions in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you think about my ideas for this story. I would love even more to hear what your ideas are for a story that you're thinking of writing and submitting for this anthology. Until next time, later.